study the mammals that lived during the age of the dinosaurs, paleontologists were dependent for a long time on tiny fragments of fossils. They believed that mammals at that time were no larger than a mouse, and that they had only flourished after the extinction of dinosaurs. But the discovery in China of amazingly well-preserved fossils at the beginning of the 21st century revealed that mammals were bigger and more varied than previously thought. Detailed analysis of their physical features allows us to understand how they were able to coexist with their carnivorous neighbors and even outlive them. The fossils of these amazing mammals were found in the volcanic region of Liaoning, northeast of Beijing. Repenomamus was the size of a wolf and was able to devour young feathered dinosaurs. They must have been victim to large predators, like these Juramaia, but they are much bigger than all previously known mammals. These Repenomamus lived 130 million years ago in a highly active volcanic area. Preserved in fine volcanic ash, their skeletons have survived the ages. Radically changing paleontologists' understanding of the first mammals.
These fossil mammals are certainly related to our own evolutionary history in the sense that we ourselves are mammals.
Mammals, whose name comes from mammary gland, are the only animals to suckle their young. Their characteristics include fur-covered bodies, ears that are separate from their jaws, and a great variety of teeth, all of which, according to the latest fossil discoveries, were already present at the time of the dinosaurs.
And what we see is that they go from having teeth with a few cusps on them to having teeth that have many different cusps or tools, such that they were able to survive the mass extinction that killed off dinosaurs.
The fossils discovered at the beginning of the 21st century show that the first modern mammals appeared 125 million years ago. But genetic analysis indicates that they may go back even further. Until the discovery of new evidence, controversy rages between geneticists and paleontologists. It all began 250 million years ago, at the beginning of the Triassic period, during a time when the world was extremely hot. The ancestors of the mammals were mammalian reptiles, like these Trinaxodon, a relative of the reptile family. Trinaxodon is considered to be a transitional species in the evolution towards mammals. Like reptiles, its legs are not under its body, but on the sides, and it has no external ears. But like mammals, it has several different kinds of teeth, and its body is covered with fur. To escape the heat, it dug burrows along the banks of rivers, which is where it was fossilized. New X-ray technology at the synchrotron radiation facility in France enables scientists to analyze this South African burrow discovered in the 19th century. Using this innovation, Vincent Fernandez is able to study the contents of the rock without destroying it.
We discovered this burrow on a site where a road was under construction, and amidst all the burrows we discovered in this small quarry, this one had small bones in it, which gave us the idea of extracting it completely and studying it here at the synchrotron in Grenoble.
This tunnel was buried 250 million years ago, at a pivotal moment in the Triassic period, when 70% of the planet's terrestrial species disappeared. This block of stone may be able to tell us more about what happened to the survivors of this dramatic extinction.
The best way to find out which animal used which burrow is to find the animal directly inside the burrow, and to find this animal, rather than clearing the rock by hand, we will use X-rays to study the animal inside the fossilized burrow.
100 billion times more powerful than hospital X-rays, the synchrotron is able to distinguish the difference in density between fossilized bones and the rock itself. This high-resolution technology revealed the presence of a Thrinaxodon, a long-lost mammal ancestor, plus an unexpected bonus: an amphibian named Brumistega lying by its side.
This is a very big surprise because, first of all, we did not expect that, but mostly it's very rare because animals don't usually share the same burrow, especially with animals that are the same size and have the same diet.
Just as some mammals hibernate to protect themselves from the cold, this Thrinaxodon burrows underground and estivates to avoid the heat. In this dormant state, it may not have been aware of the Brumistega taking refuge in its shelter. The amphibian could also have been hiding from the hostile climate, and its fossil shows that it was injured.
We discovered that the Brumistega was wounded. It had a series of 7 broken ribs that were healing. We know that because it has small bone growths around the fractures, so we see the healing process. We know it was probably injured for several weeks.
This discovery revealed that mammals' ancestors had developed the ability to enter into a state of torpor. One wounded, the other asleep. Both animals would have been taken by surprise by the rising waters.
The lineage to which Thrinaxodon belonged was capable of surviving because it could dig underground tunnels and withstand droughts thanks to its specific metabolism. The fact that this lineage survived allowed for the emergence of mammals several million years later.
Vincent and his South African colleagues are now searching for new burrows to scan, hoping to solve other mysteries.
We are also looking for an egg or a pregnant female that will finally tell us which mode of reproduction our ancestors had.
It's a difficult task because mammal fossils from the Triassic period are very rare. Until the late 20th century, the only remains we had of the first mammals were their teeth, like these tiny specimens that are preserved at the National Museum of Natural History in Paris. Mammal specialist Emmanuel Guebron remembers his early years as a paleontologist.
When I started my career in the 80s and 90s, most of the remains we found were isolated teeth. We dreamt of finding not only jaws, but complete skulls.
These tiny fragments are obtained through painstaking work. Paleontologists must sieve several tons of sediment to uncover just a few of these mammalian teeth. The teeth are well preserved because tooth enamel is particularly resistant to time. It is the hardest part of the skeleton, the part that fossilizes best.
The interesting thing about these collections of isolated mammal teeth is their small size. You can have a collection of several hundred teeth, which will fit into a shoebox. So you can have the representation of a very diversified fauna, even the history of a whole geographical province, which boils down to a collection in the drawer of a cabinet with several hundred teeth.
That's exactly what the collection studied by Emmanuel Guimperant's team looks like. Started in 1976 in a fossil deposit near Nancy, in northeastern France, it now contains close to 1,000 teeth from the Upper Triassic period, 210 million years ago. This is the oldest collection of mammals in the world, with a dozen different species identified solely through the shape of their teeth. On these molars, the three cusps are exclusive to mammals. The molars are used to grind food, while canines keep food in place, and incisors cut. This complex dentition indicates that these animals are mammals, since other animal species have only one type of tooth.
The shape of teeth is like an identity card to show what group they belong to. It's an identity card to identify the animal, and it also reveals functional information. In other words, the animal's diet. Because sharp teeth, for instance, indicate an insectivorous diet. But if they have rather flattened teeth, that indicates a herbivorous diet.
Though they tell us more about how these dinosaur-age mammals ate, the fossils give no indication as to what they looked like. However, a tiny clue, discovered in France in 2008, reveals more about the skin of these extinct animals. This abandoned quarry is located near the town of Archingay, on the west coast of France. On this sand excavation site, two paleontologists from the University of Rennes take advantage of the exposed walls to come and collect fossils. This geological layer dates from the Cretaceous period, 100 million years ago. At the time, it was covered by a forest of conifers and ginkgo trees, whose remains have been uncovered by Romain Voulot and Didier Néraudot.
Look at this. This leaf has been in clay for the past 100 million years. Comes off, and if I blow on it, I can bend it, which shows that it's still flexible.
Apart from its change in color, the passage of millions of years doesn't seem to have altered this leaf significantly. The paleontologists are searching for another treasure in this petrified forest. Occasionally, bits of animals become trapped in the resin from conifer trees. When the resin fossilizes, it becomes amber.
So, here we are at the bottom of the quarry. Water has poured down and created an interesting little outcrop, because you can see the different layers. The layer is streaked because you have different alternating sediments. You will have two main types of deposits, you find sand deposits, white, ochre and red, and then another deposit from an accumulation of coal, which forms these small black veins. So here you can see sand alternating with clay beds that contain plant debris and small pieces of amber, which is what we're looking for in particular.
The sediment is then sieved in a nearby pond.
We've got quite a few small fragments here.
That's a good-sized piece. It's slightly translucent, part brown, part red.
Paleontology relies on meticulous work and a fair amount of luck. One major clue to the appearance of mammals was discovered thanks to an incredible stroke of good fortune. While looking for bacterial filaments, one of Romain Voulot's colleagues made an exceptional discovery. 2 hairs trapped in amber.
So we see the whole piece of amber, and in the middle, the longer of the 2 hairs, which is slightly bent. As you can see, it is very, very fine. We compared this 100-million-year-old fossil hair with the hair of current mammals, and we found that this one presents many similarities with what can be found in existing species, including scale morphology and scale layout. And their contours also show strong similarities to the hair of living animals. From a paleontological point of view, this is an outstanding discovery, since there are only 1 or 2 fossil mammal hairs in the world.
100 million years ago, warm-blooded mammals already had the same hair as today to protect them from the climate and allow them to survive the extinction that decimated large dinosaurs. In China, at the beginning of the 21st century, new clues to the physical appearance of mammals were unearthed. In a deposit dating from the Cretaceous period, 125 million years ago, fossils were discovered in an area that was once a peninsula with a subtropical climate. This world, dominated by huge dinosaurs like these 30-foot-high titanosaurs, was also home to mammals. Like this Eomaia scansoria, literally, ancient mother that can climb. Preyed upon by feathered dinosaurs like this Zenwan long, Eomaia was the oldest known mammal ancestor when it was discovered in 2002. Located in the Liaoning region, northeast of Beijing, this deposit was once a volcanic area that has preserved our distant past for millions of years. Shi Luo, an American paleontologist of Chinese origin, is at the Siheitun Cliff, where many long-lost fossils have emerged.
This Yixian Formation is lake deposits and it trapped all variety of fossil vertebrates. Most famous of all are feathered dinosaurs, but very important for understanding our own human beings' early evolutionary history are these Cretaceous mammals.
125 million years ago, multiple volcanic eruptions created a series of sedimentary layers. Pockets of red ash flattened the mammals into the gray mud, like a printing press. Measuring 6 inches from nose to tail and weighing around an ounce, Eomaia would have been fair game for the feathered dinosaurs.
The fossil mammals are preserved very well because they lived nearby shallow water lake. The sediments accumulated fairly slow, and also there are occasional volcanic eruptions, so the hot volcanic ash helped to trap these fossil mammals in the sediments, and that is why they are preserved so well, therefore gave us this beautiful fossil to study.
At the Natural History Museum of Beijing, Xie Luo studies fossils of the Eomaia scansoria group, placental mammals whose fetuses are sustained in the uterus by a placenta, just like humans. The whole body of the animal is beautifully preserved, a dream come true for any mammal specialist.
It is absolutely amazing that we have the entire fossils here. With the complete skeleton, we can start to flesh out a more interesting picture about these early mammals. These guys lived in Cretaceous. It has very gracile jaws, and we can recognize, even with naked eye, the limbs are quite slender, and we can tell by its very long fingers and the different nail structures that they are tree climbers. It shows that the placental ancestors are capable of exploring the arboreal or tree living niches than all these other contemporaries, and this gave us a big evolutionary advantage.
Eomaia left its young high up out of reach of dinosaurs that sometimes slept on the ground. These very first mammals would have to leave their shelter in order to drink. Their extraordinary mobility is revealed by this skeleton, particularly by the elongated trapezoid bones, which resemble those of tree-dwelling primates.
It is really by studying the ankle joint, we are able to recognize great many features to place this particular fossil on the line that eventually gave rise to modern placentals.
Its feeding habits were revealed thanks to its extremely well-preserved teeth.
You can tell that these mammals have a very sharp cusp in the front, and in the lower teeth, generally there were a series of very sharp triangles, and those are very effective for cutting the skeletons of insects and also slice off the flesh of worms.
After the discovery of Eomaia, more fossils were unearthed in China, changing the vision that paleontologists had of ancient mammals. Countless wonders are kept at the Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology in Beijing. Among them is a Repenomamus with a complete and unusually large skeleton. Yongqing Wang is the paleontologist in charge of studying this strange 30-inch creature, unearthed in 2004.
A lot of Mesozoic mammals that's about the size of mouse or rat. So this is quite big.
Another feature of this large mammal is its sharp, pointed teeth, embedded in a strong jaw.
Before we found this animal, we know the Mesozoic mammals, usually we thought they are insectivorous and small, living in the shadow of dinosaurs. You can see the teeth like sharp and pointed. So it's a carnivore animal. Especially in his stomach area, there are some fragmentary bones of baby dinosaurs called Psittacosaurs. So we said, oh, okay, this guy ate dinosaurs.
The animal's stomach contents are revolutionary. They contain proof that some mammal ancestors actually fed on young dinosaurs, rather than living in their shadow. Paleontologists do not know exactly how they hunted, but they believe Repenomamus worked together in packs, like wolves. The Beijing collection has many surprises in store for scientists. Discovered in 2006, Volaticotherium has an unusual feature: a large fold of skin connecting its upper and lower limbs. Observed under a microscope, this dark stain reveals the presence of numerous hairs. Called a patagium, it's a fine membrane of skin covered in fur. Like a flying squirrel, the taut skin stretched between its limbs meant that Volaticotherium was able to glide from the trees. Before this discovery, scientists believed that bats were the first flying mammals to appear 50 million years ago. Volaticotherium, who was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, showed that flying mammals were around long before that. This nocturnal hunter waited for dusk to start searching for its prey.
It's really interesting. It's told us the ecological diversity of the Mesozoic mammals is much wider than we thought before. Usually we thought animals living in the tree or walking on the ground, but these animals can glide in the air.
This flying animal confirms that mammals had adapted to different environments long before the extinction of dinosaurs. Despite the discovery of these fossils in China, one question still troubled the scientific community during the early 21st century. When did placental mammals first appear? Geneticists and paleontologists thrashed out their opposing views in scientific journals. In the German town of Oldenburg, a team of researchers hunts down the genes of modern mammals in order to construct their family tree.
We can estimate by seeing how similar a gene is in two different species of mammal, how closely related they are.
Olaf Beninde Emmons is the author of a 2007 study which analyzed the genes of 99% of animals living today. This mammoth task required 8 months of DNA sequencing to track the genetic mutations of 60 markers throughout the evolution of mammals.
The molecular data will give us a much more complete picture. We have DNA here for many more species than we have fossil data for. The fossils will give us point estimates throughout the tree. The DNA will fill in the gaps and give us all the divergence times for all the species of mammals and all the common ancestors that were.
This method, called the molecular clock, shows that placental mammals separated from marsupials 160 million years ago during the Jurassic period, then diversified during the Cretaceous period to form the current main groups: rodents, carnivores, and primates. An unexpected result, since no fossil of these early mammals has ever been discovered.
This was interesting because there's a very big disconnect between molecular studies and fossil studies.
In Pittsburgh, on the other side of the Atlantic, another study offered very different results. It is the work of John Whipple, a paleontologist at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. Its starting point was the discovery of a skull found in a 75-million-year-old deposit in Mongolia. Named Malestis gobiensis, it has been studied from every angle since it does not belong to any known species. 400 of its morphological features have been compared to those of 82 fossil or living mammals.
What we did is we looked at the individual morphological features of this animal across a broad array of other fossil forms and living mammals to try to figure out what it was related to. And our study supported the traditional view that there were no fossils living during the Cretaceous that were members of the placental group itself. There were only the ancestors of the placentals living.
Which of these two studies should we believe, fossil or genetic?
The molecular studies all tend to say that the crown group orders, rodents, primates, carnivores, bats, they all have their origins in the Cretaceous when the dinosaurs were still alive. The problem is there's absolutely no fossil evidence supporting this.
Many of these modern groups, according to the molecular clock analyses, actually they should be present in the Cretaceous record. We can't find them.
There's no doubt that there were placental mammals in the Cretaceous. What's debated is what kind of placental mammals they are. And it's a question of who's right at the moment.
To achieve the most complete mammal family tree, both types of data will need to be refined, defining the pace of genetic mutations on one hand, and seeking fossil beds on the other, since new fossils would confirm the geneticist's hypothesis. In the meantime, paleontologists are also trying to understand how these early mammals protected themselves from dinosaurs. The ability to nurse their young could have been a benefit.
If we want to understand how modern theories come from, we need to look at modern theron's distant relatives.
Zangiotherium is a mammal that is even more ancient than placental mammals. This extremely well-preserved fossil was discovered in China in 1997.
We can be relatively sure it is a mammal because it had fur, and associated with fur would be a whole series of reproductive features. And so we know that it must have nursed its fetuses, but we don't know if the fetuses was born either in an egg or a live fetus.
Lactation offers an advantage when food is scarce, since the young continue to be fed thanks to their mother's body reserves. Lactation first appeared in the form of hundreds of milk-producing glands on the abdomen. Just like modern platypuses, the young would lick the thick milk from their mother's hair. Zangiotherium has another characteristic in common with monotremes, like the platypus: a spur on its hind leg.
This species definitely has another fossil that has preserved with a bony spur, and it's also consistent with the first observation directly from this particular specimen. In modern monotreme, this spur is definitely used for self-defense, but we do not know if it is truly poisonous or it's just a bony spur.
Snakes have fangs. Insects can sting. But this defense technique is rare among modern mammals. Located on the male's hind legs, this spur may have released a venom capable of paralyzing their foes. According to scientists, this weapon is not terribly efficient since it takes time for venom to have an effect. As they evolved, they tried other strategies, like running away. And to improve this tactic, what better than a superior sense of hearing? The evolution of ear bones was a key advantage for primitive mammals. In 2011, the discovery of this Liaoning fossil shows at last how the jawbones of these reptiles migrated to form the middle ear of modern mammals 120 million years ago.
This specimen is the most complete mammal we have ever found in Western Liaoning. All the bones are preserved here. So it's a very beautiful specimen. Especially this specimen preserves some tiny bones of ear region. These ear ossicles usually is very difficult to be preserved in the fossils because it's very tiny. More important, it is a transitional stage of the mammalian middle ear evolution.
In ancient mammals, the lower jaw was linked to the skull by an elongated bone. In Liaoning, this evolved to begin forming the ear bones. The hammer, anvil, and tympanic ring became completely detached in modern mammals to form the inner ear. Amazingly, every mammal embryo, including humans, reproduces this evolutionary phase in the womb, resulting in the formation of the inner ear. This precision tool allows us to analyze everything that happens around us, constantly.
Yes, you can hear the dangers earlier than the other kind of animals, so helps them to escape from the predator.
The mystery of the inner ear bones, a link with our reptilian past, is cleared up thanks to this new fossil. Another mammal weapon, teeth, revealed their secrets at the University of Washington in Seattle. This is where Gregory Wilson uses state-of-the-art technology to analyze the teeth of multituberculates, mammal species that became extinct 34 million years ago.
We found some really exciting results, actually. What we found is that these multituberculates that were living alongside dinosaurs actually undergo an adaptive radiation 20 million years before dinosaurs go extinct. And what we see is that they go from having teeth with a few cusps on them such that they can eat insects and so on, to having teeth that have many different cusps or tools such that they can exploit a new resource in flowering plants. It's that ability to exploit that new resource that allows them to expand in terms of numbers of different species of multituberculates, as well as the range of body sizes that they have, such that they were able to survive the mass extinction that killed off dinosaurs.
His study shows that multituberculates evolved well before the extinction of dinosaurs. They moved from an insect-based diet to a diet based on fruit, or even angiosperms, flowering plants that appeared during the Cretaceous period. To reach this astonishing result, Gregory Wilson used fossils collected over 100 years in Montana's Hell Creek Formation. By studying this collection of tiny teeth under a microscope, he was able to familiarize himself with the many species of multituberculates.
This is the largest of multituberculates that lived, the size of maybe a beaver or a marmot. And it has many, many bumps all along the tooth row. And those bumps act as tools to crush and grind food. Another example sits inside this tiny vial. It's another multituberculate, but it also had teeth with many little bumps. So this was a smaller version of this animal that lived during the time of dinosaurs. This lineage we've known about for a very long time, but it's been difficult to really quantify or understand what the shape of those teeth mean. We've tried many different approaches, but none have really been able to give us the precision that we can now attain today.
This technological revolution came in the form of the CT scan, a medical imaging tool nowadays used by paleontologists. Specimens like this 67-million-year-old tooth are first scanned with X-rays on a microscopic scale. It is identifiable by its long incisor, but what intrigues researchers is the complexity of its molars. Once the data is collected, cartography software reconstructs an accurate map showing the shape of the teeth. Gregory Wilson has found that carnivores have a fairly simple tooth structure, with approximately 110 cusps per row of teeth, while multituberculate teeth are far more complex, with up to 348 cusps.
This particular specimen that I just pulled up has about 250 different complex little tools on the surface of its tooth row. And those little tools help break down plant material that needs to be processed very finely in order to be digested properly. So these guys have evolved towards eating plants.
It is this key function of grinding which promoted the explosion of herbivore and omnivore species, an ecological niche untapped by primitive mammals. Despite these multiple discoveries, at the end of the 20th century, the crucial question about the origins of the first real mammals remained. Once again, the Liaoning region provided the answer. In 2011, Chinese farmers found the fossil of a mammal called Juramaia sinensis, meaning Jurassic Mother from China. The paleontologist Shi Luo has come for the first time to visit this area, which stretches over several miles. It is not an easy task to identify fossil-bearing rocks under the fields of lush corn. But he is guided by a local specialist in feathered dinosaurs, whose oldest specimen, Antiquus, was excavated on a site close to this one.
It's exciting fossil discovery because it gave us a new milestone as to when the placental lineage first started to appear on Earth. And all the modern placental mammals have a deep root into the Jurassic, and it's coming from right here. These rocks also are embedded with volcanic ashes, and these sites had been dated by geochronology to be 160 million, plus or minus a little bit. So we know for sure these rocks actually belong to the late Jurassic.
The Juramaia sinensis fossil is the oldest specimen of a placental mammal and is a critical piece of the puzzle in the evolution of mammals. It was identified by its teeth, which included molars, canines, and incisors. As the genetic studies of living mammals showed, their origin is much older than existing fossils had suggested, since the discovery of Juramaia means that placental mammals must have appeared at least 35 million years before Eomaia scansoria. And even though paleontologists are still seeking fossils from the Cretaceous period, belonging to current groups like rodents or carnivores, this discovery brings the conflicting opinion of geneticists and paleontologists closer together.
Independent corroboration by fossils on one hand and by molecules on the other gave us the confidence that we are getting closer to the correct answer.
With Juramaia, we know that 160 million years ago, mammals already had the characteristics that made them successful: fur, complex teeth, and acute hearing to escape predators and locate their prey.
The general adaptation, such as insectivory and such as capability to move on the tree, gave this particular mammal some evolutionary advantage. It is really equipped well enough already in the late Jurassic for its descendant to thrive after the dinosaurs' extinction.
Certainly, the mammals' ancestors were very small at the time of dinosaurs, but much more varied and better equipped than was previously thought, with advantages that we find later in primates, our closest relatives.
Rethinking.